Hello everyone, good morning and welcome back to Sports Today. It's the start of a brand new week, plenty of sporting action to look forward to, but you know what they say, the world of sport never really sleeps. There's so much going on, even at those times when you might not actually be checking the news or, more importantly, catching some all-important sleep. That's why we here bring you a video every single morning, which we call the Morning Wrap, and we'll be bringing you some interesting things that have happened in the world of sport whilst you were catching up on some rest. So without further ado, let's check into a story that's already been making plenty of buzz, and that is the fact that Australia captain Pat Cummins has in fact flown back to Australia. Now, media reports were saying that it was down to personal reasons that he chose to suddenly rush back, and we have an update for you on the same. In fact, Cricket Australia has confirmed to us here at Sports Today that there is indeed a family emergency of sorts that came up, and that is why Pat Cummins has flown back to Australia, and that he will in fact be rejoining the team midway for their preparations for the third test. So as things stand, there doesn't seem to be any indication that Cummins will miss the third match. He's flown back because of course there's plenty of a gap. Don't forget there was a 1 week gap between the two test matches anyway, and the match ended in 3 days, which means that there's now in essence a 9-day gap between these games. So there's plenty of course of time for him to go back, actually get a hold of the emergency, and then rejoin the team for of course the preparations for that third test. Now again, the series is on a bit of a knife's edge for Australia. They've already lost their chance of actually retaining the Border Gavaskar trophy, but they could very well, they would want to at least get a draw, if not a win, to ensure that their World Test Championship status of making the finals is actually confirmed. Now, sticking to cricket news and to the Border Gavaskar trophy, India had named their squad for the remaining two tests. It was unchanged, but there was one very slight change that did not escape the notice of many, and that was the fact that Rahul was no longer the designated vice captain. Now, one of Rahul's most staunch critics on social media has been former India international Venkatesh Prasad, who's now actually come out to clarify and say that, look, I'm not someone who hates him for no reason. I do actually like the guy. In fact, we'll just go over his tweet rather quickly. This is what he said. He said that a few people think I have something personal against Rahul. In fact, it is the opposite. I wish well for him, and playing him in such form was never going to enhance his confidence. For him to earn his place back in Test cricket, now that the domestic season has ended, Rahul needs to play county cricket in England, score runs and earn his place back, much like Pujara did when he was dropped. Playing Test cricket for the country and doing everything possible to get back into form will be the best answer. But will it be possible to skip the IPL? Venkatesh Prasad really does hit the nail on the head with that particular analysis, because again, it is a good suggestion on his part that KL go maybe play some county cricket. There's no domestic cricket that's going to be going on now. The domestic season's over. The IPL will be coming up next. And he does make a good point that he maybe needs to be playing some, red ball cricket domestically to get his confidence back, because it doesn't seem to be as much of a technical issue as much as it seems to be a lack of confidence with KL. But will he be skipping the IPL? Seems highly unlikely. The fact that the team is still stuck with him does show that they still believe in him, but there will doubtless be questions raised over how long a rope Rahul will be given. Switching our focus now from cricket to the world of football, there were plenty of interesting results in yesterday's matches, so we'll quickly go over some of the bigger ones. Manchester United beat Leicester City 3-0 courtesy of this man, Marcus Rashford. He just cannot stop scoring at this point. He scored the most goals since the World Cup break ended, and he's also, he's been breaking a few more records. We'll be doing a separate video on Rashford here, but his good form has now meant that Man United, currently in third place, are only 3 points behind Manchester City, who are in second place. Considering that United still very much a work in progress under Erik ten Hag, it speaks volumes as to how quickly they've managed to, make up for lost time that they had actually lost out on in recent seasons. But this wasn't the only interesting result when you're looking at the top four, because Tottenham Hotspur actually ended up beating West Ham United 2-0 courtesy of Son Heung-min coming off the bench and just doing Son Heung-min things, which is impacting the game in a positive way for Spurs. The result's a good one for Spurs as it shows they stay in the top 4, but it also ensures that West Ham United, Spurs' London rivals, stay in the drop zone. So there are going to be plenty of questions asked about David Moyes, the manager there, because it's not like money has not been invested by the Hammers owners and they would not have envisioned being in a relegation scrap. More football news, Barcelona ended up beating Cadiz 2-0 to ensure that their lead atop La Liga currently stays that of 8 points. Now, Barcelona have been going through something of a massive win streak in La Liga. In fact, the last time they dropped points in a La Liga fixture was all the way back in December. So it's been a long time that they've actually dropped any points, and they've been in flying form, and they're continuing to prove that they are indeed the team to beat this year in La Liga. Of course, stranger things have happened, but an 8-point lead with more than half the games played does seem like a very decisive one, especially if they can win the El Clasico that will be coming up later in the season, because if they do that, then the title race is definitely all but over. Switching our focus now, there's plenty happening in the tennis world as well. Thought we'd catch up a bit on that. This man, Carlos Alcaraz, the world number 1 until after he had won the US Open, but someone who actually had to drop down the rankings due to a 4-month injury layoff, made his return to competitive tennis in the Argentina Open, which is an ATP 250 event taking place in Argentina, and he ended up winning the final by beating Cameron Norrie in straight sets. Massive comeback for Alcaraz, and couldn't have come at a better time considering the next Grand Slam that will of course be taking place will be the French Open. So he'd want to, and considering Alcaraz is seen as a natural successor to Nadal, he too is someone who's very, very strong in clay. Will be interesting to see how he stacks up against someone like Novak Djokovic, who has of course established himself as something of a final boss in the tennis world now that, well, Nadal is frequently injured and Roger Federer has of course retired. In other tennis news, another former world number 1 in Daniil Medvedev ended up claiming the Rotterdam Open, which is an ATP 500 tennis event which is taking place in Netherlands, and he ended up beating Jannik Sinner in a hard-fought final. It went 3 sets, but it was in fact Medvedev who ended up claiming the crown, and more importantly ended up climbing up back into the top 10 of the ATP rankings. The Russian himself has experienced something of a downward slump in the recent season or so, and would be keen to get back to playing his best before, of course, the Grand Slam season gets back underway again. And we'll end our morning update with some news from India that at one point had been making a lot of, waves. And it was, of course, the protests that took place between the wrestlers and the WFI, which actually led to the removal of the WFI president and an oversight committee to be formed to look into the demands of the wrestlers. Now, the oversight committee had, of course, met with the wrestlers, but now Sports Today has learned that they've also met with the WFI stakeholders, and considering the fact that their one month long deadline to come up with their report will be expiring on 21st February, which is Tuesday, they will in fact be releasing their report detailing all the key findings very, very soon. So stay tuned for that as well. We could be getting to know of some big changes potentially coming to the Wrestling Federation of India, and some interesting changes being made to the way it is they run, and potentially maybe let's see if the wrestlers get what it is they wanted. For now though, thank you guys so very much for joining us this morning. I hope you have a great week and day, and remember to stay tuned to Sports Today. And if you enjoy our work, don't forget, like the video, share it with your friends, tap the bell icon, leave us a comment, all of that stuff. Subscribe to the channel. Also follow us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Last but not least, download the SportsTech app too. Thank you all for joining us. I hope to see you with us through the day. For now though, goodbye.